Hey, I'm Sean Lazar, and I'm here with Lucas Kitchen to talk about his new book, Missionary to Mars, available now on Kindle at Amazon.com, and the paperback is soon to follow, or go to our website, freegrace.in. Now, as you can tell by the title, Missionary to Mars, this is about missions, and I wanted to know, why are missions important? Why should anyone care about missions?
It is so interwoven into the story of Christianity. I mean, if you think about what was the final thing that Jesus told us to do before he ascended into heaven and said, "I'll be back later, guys." He tells us to do missions. Now, that can be missions with our neighbors, that can be missions with our family members, that can be missions internationally, but he told us to do missions.
Right.
And for at least Westerners, it seems like we divide missions and separate it from, maybe like hometown evangelism or something. Missions is this other thing, and so one of the things that I'm really interested in is getting people to think about themselves as a missionary, because that's interwoven into our faith. It's in the fabric of what we're expected to do. And so I believe that part of pleasing the Lord as believers is engaging or supporting in some way the act of either local or international missions in some fashion.
Was there something in particular that inspired you to write a whole science fiction book about missions, other than it just being generally important? Was there something that kind of inspired you to say, I need to write a book specifically about this?
Well, so originally I had written some theology books, like practical theology, not deep academic theology, but just some practical sort of Christian living theology books. Mm-hmm. And I was looking for something else. I had written some sci-fi and some fantasy years earlier that I kind of cut my teeth on or whatever. And I wanted to jump back into that, to try something. And I was asking this question. I was like, I want to do something that I'm, a genre that I'm excited about, but also that has a message to it. But honestly, the genre idea jumped at me first. Mm-hmm. It was that I really was wanting to do something sci-fi, and I started sort of casting around to think about like what kind of story would allow for message first kind of fiction, because most stories, if the characters start talking about theology, it sort of feels like, well, they've gotten way off topic, and fiction doesn't really allow for that.
Right.
Fiction, everything needs to have a purpose, or your readers start to say, what are we doing? Why are we talking about this?
Right.
And so for me, it was kind of like, I need to have a narrative that makes sense of having a few, and it's honestly not a whole lot, but a few theological conversations through this book. And so for this process, a missionary, I tried different things just kind of as a thought experiment, and I just basically landed on a missionary because, well, of course he'll be talking about these things,
If you're a missionary, you've got to talk about
he better be, or he's not a good
missionary.
missionary. And so that led me to then try to overcome my overwhelming feeling that missions was a little boring.
Right.
Because I kind of had that thought, like, I don't know, that's not, I wasn't, like, this idea sat in my idea folder for quite a while before I actually jumped at it.
Okay.
But like I've said before, I started reading books about missionaries and realized these guys were adventurers. These guys were heroes. They were also the ones that we write about often were really stubborn.
Yes.
They were tough.
Yes.
And they would go to places where they were likely to get killed. I was like, okay, I see heroics in that, And so I actually shifted my thinking about missionaries and mission work as I was kind of reading those kind of biographies to get ready for this one. And so honestly, like, you're a writer, the process of writing is, for us, a process of growth. Yeah. Because what we're putting on the page isn't all in here when we start the project.
Right.
It's we kind of develop as we go along.
Right.
And so so for me, I developed this respect for historical missionaries.
Yeah.
Ones that went to dangerous places.
So one of the plot devices in the book, or one of this part of the setting, is that there seems to have been a collapse of Christianity throughout this inhabited solar system, and it looked, there's a collapse of missions too.
Yeah.
So far as Eustace, the main character, knows, there are no other missionaries out there. So is that kind of your commentary a little bit on the the church dropping the ball on doing missions now? Is it are you kind of like, is this kind of like, this is where we're headed, guys, unless we change things? Or what was the thinking about that?
Yeah, so that would be one way to take it, although that's not really what I was thinking.
Okay.
What I originally started with is I wanted to merge two different types of stories. The story of Acts in the Bible and Star Wars. Boom! I want to put those together. So, but there's a big problem. If we were to go 700 years in our actual future, look, Christianity is gonna be throughout the solar system. So, in a way, I started to think of this as an alternative world where Christianity, where God's will allowed for Christianity to shrink down to a very small number of believers so that this story could be told. But in actual reality, I think that what Jesus said, that the gates of hell will not prevail against what we're doing here, I think that's true. And so this was sort of a way to tell the story of, in a way, the early church in the far future, although it is set in a world where Christianity has been around for a long time. So it's kind of an alternate future in that sense.
Yeah. It's like he has to, even though there's been this long history of Christianity, he's effectively starting from
scratch,
right? So it's like, and I like that because everyone considering missions, truly going to a new place, truly trying to start a new work, has to start from scratch.
Yeah.
And I love the way you portray. How do you do that? I mean, a lot of people are intimidated by the work. They think, I want to get started, but I don't know how to start, and I don't know where to start. And I think you portray that in the character in Eustace's. He doesn't know. He doesn't really know what he's doing.
It's an experiment.
No one's modeled it for him. No one has shown him how to do it.
Yeah.
He's trying new things, and as you say, like having that character trait of stubbornness. Is definitely part of being a good missionary in this book, but also having the character trait of being an experimenter, of being an entrepreneur and just willing to try new things and fail, and just try again and try again and try again. So is that something you learned from missionary biographies, or how did you bring that stubbornness into?
Well, so like I think you have this same trait. I don't know that I learned that from missionary biographies as much as I learned that from our mission work. So, I call us media missionaries. We're missionaries to the indigenous people of the internet, and so we're kind of a new wave of missionaries. And what I notice about our ministry is that we have tried so many different things over the years, and you've been with us for about a year now, and you and I have experimented with different things. We throw out ideas all the time. If we were stuck in the 1940s and trying to do missions in that style, then, there might be some success, but honestly, in this fast-paced world that we're in, where there's new waves of AI and technology that we're constantly trying to keep up with, we are experimenting with ways to reach people in the new media, and so that's one of the things. So, like, if you know me, Eustace has some of my DNA in him, in that he loves technology, and he's always kind of interested in how to use that technology to get the message out, and he's hacking tech that he sort of sequesters and is sending out messages in kind of an ad hoc way. And that's kind of how our ministry feels sometimes. It's like we're trying to sneak the gospel into social media or into our YouTube channel. Or one of the things that I've started to try recently is to sneak the gospel into tutorials about how to use AI, because that's something we're doing a lot. And so, in a way, Eustace has the mark of what our ministry does, which is, trying to get the gospel out in whatever new tool we can use to do it. So I've completely forgotten what your question was. That's just what I wanted to say, though.
Well, I think maybe the takeaway lesson is one reason why you might want to read this book is just to be inspired by the character's example of not really knowing how to serve God in this way, knowing that he knows he needs to. He just doesn't know how to, and he just tries different things. And really, as you say, this book is an example of what Eustace is trying to do. You wrote this book, a fiction book about missions, in order to see if this would inspire people.
Yes.
To do
Yeah, well,
missions.
that's true. Yeah.
You
that's
know,
what
it's a
this
very
is.
kind of a meta, there's a kind of a meta relationship here. You're doing essentially what the character in the book is trying to do as well. So,
and see, I think that mentality is actually more important than the skill level. So, like,
because he's not very skilled.
He's not skilled.
At all.
He's bumbling around trying to figure it out, and he's a bit clumsy. But what the most important aspect about him, and I think maybe about any successful minister, is we know that we keep trying until our last breath.
Yeah.
And the actual methods we use probably will change, but we will keep trying. And I've seen people over the years that they find a method that they think works, and then they say, this is what we do in our ministry, and we just keep doing it and keep doing it and keep doing it. And I think eventually that mentality gets left behind. And I think for us, the more important thing is not, do I know how to use Photoshop, or do I know how to write in Scrivener, or do I know how to use the new AI tools? It's just the mentality that I keep working, I keep moving. And I think it's God's job to decide where to put his tools, which we are the tools, you know. God will use us in whatever way if we just have that mentality that I'm just going to keep going, I'm going to use what I've got, and you know, stay hungry and keep moving forward.
Well, thanks for that thought, Lucas. And if you're someone who is interested in getting into ministry, starting ministry, I think one of the reasons why you might want to read this book is just to be inspired by the example of a character who's kind of faced with the same situation you are. I mean, set in the future in a different, in a really apocalyptic, dark context, but he perseveres anyways, and tries different things and just gets started. And maybe you need to be inspired to just get your ministry started.
I like that.
If so, I think you want to pick up this book, Missionary to Mars, available at Amazon, available at our website, www.freegrace.in. Thanks for talking.
Thanks, Sean.